Please subscribe to my channel. This is my sincere request to you, honey." That morning my parents laid out breakfast like a royal coronation, but they did not know the crown was never in their hands. My brother arrived looking like $1 million deal, his wife smiling as if they finally won. Then the attorney opened an old briefcase and froze the house. The family lake house they intended to gift him had actually belonged to me for 8 years. That was only the first twist. My name is Stella Powell. I am 33 years old, and I've spent my entire life learning that silence is often the loudest sound in a room. I deal in data security for a living as the co-founder of Harbor Lock Systems, a company my family knows very little about. To them, I work with computers. To them, I am the quiet daughter who lives in a small apartment in the city and drives a sedan that is 5 years old. They mistake my minimalism for struggle and my privacy for a lack of ambition. That morning, as the sun began to burn the mist off Willowstone Lake, I sat at the dining table of Foxglove Lake House and watched my parents prepare to disown me. The signs were subtle, woven into the domestic theater of a Saturday morning breakfast. It was the sort of cinematic slow burn that makes the back of your neck prickle long before the monster steps into the frame. My mother, Linder, was setting the table. This was not the usual chipped melamine we used for casual lake weekends, the plates that smelled faintly of dish soap and old summers. She had brought out the Royal Dalton porcelain, the set she kept wrapped in tissue paper in the credenza back at their main house in the suburbs. It was a set reserved for weddings, funerals, and apparently whatever was happening today. She placed the silverware with trembling precision, aligning the forks, as if the geometry of the table could impose order on the chaos they were about to unleash. My father, Gary, stood by the window overlooking the dock. He held a mug of black coffee, his posture rigid. He was not looking at the beauty of the Michigan morning or the way the light hit the pine trees. He was looking at the property like an actuary assessing a liability. The property taxes in Hollow Pine went up another 6% this year, my father said. He did not turn around. He spoke to the glass. And the insurance premiums are climbing. Living on the water is not cheap, Stellar. It is a luxury, a heavy one. I took a sip of my own coffee. It was bitter. I had made it myself, but the taste seemed to come from the room itself. "It is a beautiful location, Dad," I said neutrally. He turned then, his face lined with a performance of weary wisdom. "Beauty does not pay the bills. The roof on the boathouse is going to need replacing in 2 years, maybe 3. That is a $15,000 job, minimum. Then there is the retaining wall. You need deep pockets to keep a place like this standing. You need stability." He emphasized the word stability with a heavy look in my direction. I was wearing a simple gray sweater and jeans, no jewelry, no makeup to him. I looked like someone who rented, someone who lived month to month. He had no idea that I could buy this entire neighborhood in cash if I wanted to, but I had never told them that. Money in my family was a language of control, and I had opted out of that conversation a decade ago. "Evan has done well for himself," my mother said, right on cue. She was smoothing a wrinkle in the tablecloth, her voice too bright, too airy. "He has really stepped up this year. That promotion at the logistics firm gave him a solid bump. And with Kendra and the boys, he is well. He is settled. He is a real family man." "A man with responsibilities," my father echoed, nodding. "A man who understands what it takes to maintain a legacy." I looked down at my empty plate. The narrative was being built brick by brick. Stellar is solitary. Therefore, Stellar is unstable. Evan is married with children. Therefore, Evan is responsible. It was an old script, one I had memorized since childhood. Usually, I just let it slide. I let them have their stories because it kept the peace. But today felt different. The air in the house was too thin, charged with a static electricity that made the fine hairs on my arms stand up. "Is someone else coming?" I asked. I pointed to the head of the table. There were 6 settings. Mom, Dad, Evan, Kendra, and me. That made 5. But there was a 6th chair pulled up, a pristine place setting waiting for a ghost. My mother froze for a fraction of a second before placing a napkin down. "Oh, just a friend of your father's, a notary. We have some paperwork to sort out. Boring administrative things. We thought it would be best to get it done while everyone is here." Paperwork, I repeated. Just estate planning, my father said quickly. Too quickly. You know how it is. You get to our age. You have to start thinking about the future, putting things in the right hands. Right hands, I said before I could press further. The sound of a heavy engine roared up the driveway. It was Evan's SUV, a massive vehicle that always seemed too large for the narrow gravel roads of Hollow Pine. He parked it with a crunch of tires right next to my compact sedan, dwarfing it. The door burst open, and suddenly the house was filled with noise. My nephews Leo and Sam came sprinting in, bringing the energy of a hurricane. They were 7 and 5, full of chaotic joy. I smiled genuinely for the first time that morning. I love those boys. They were innocent. They did not know that their existence was being used as a bargaining chip in a game of property rights. Behind them came Evan and Kendra. My brother Evan looked like he was dressed for a photo shoot in a lifestyle magazine. He wore a crisp button-down shirt tucked into chinos, loafers that looked brand new, and a watch that was too big for his wrist. He had the confident swagger of a man who believed he had already won the lottery. He hugged Mom, clapped Dad on the shoulder, and gave me a brief, condescending nod. Hey, Stellar, still driving that old Toyota. I heard a rattle when I pulled up. You really should get that checked out, Evan said. It runs fine, Evan, I said. Kendra followed him, shaking out her hair. She wore a sundress that was slightly too formal for breakfast, and her smile was fixed, like a mask she had glued on in the car mirror. She looked around the room, her eyes scanning the furniture, the walls, the view, with a possessive glint. It was the look of a woman measuring for curtains. Oh, Linder, the place looks adorable, Kendra gushed, dropping her designer bag on the sofa. But the light in here is a bit dim, isn't it? Evan and I were talking on the drive up. If we knocked out that wall between the kitchen and the living room, we could really open it up, make it modern. My mother flinched slightly. She loved that wall, but she forced a smile. Well, that would be a big project. Evan can handle it, Kendra said, looking at her husband adoringly. He is so handy. We all sat down. The tension was palpable, a physical weight pressing down on the table. My mother served pancakes and bacon, piling food onto Evan's plate as if he were a returning war hero. This dock is in better shape than I remember, Evan said between bites, waving his fork toward the window. You know, I came up here 3 weeks ago to fix those loose boards. Took me all afternoon. If I had not done it, someone could have twisted an ankle. You have to stay on top of these things. I paused with my coffee cup halfway to my mouth. 3 weeks ago, I had hired a local contractor named Mike to replace the entire section of the decking because the wood was rotting. I had the invoice in my email. I had paid $2,000 for the labor and materials. I looked at Evan. He was lying effortlessly constructing a reality where he was the savior of Foxglove Lake House. And the water heater, Evan continued, gaining momentum. I flushed it out last fall. That is why the pressure is good today. You are welcome. By the way, I had replaced the water heater 2 years ago. I had paid for the installation. I had paid for the permit. You are such a help, son, my father said, beaming. That is exactly what I mean. This house needs a man's touch. It needs someone who is willing to put in the sweat equity. It is a labor of love, Evan said, leaning back in his chair, surveying the room like a feudal lord. Kendra and I have been discussing the summer schedule. I think we are going to block out July and August completely. The boys need the fresh air. It will be good for them to grow up on the water just like we did. He looked at me then, a flicker of challenge in his eyes. We will figure out a weekend for you to come up, Stellar. Don't worry. We will make space for you. The air left the room. Make space for me, I asked, my voice level. Kendra chimed in, laughing a little too loudly. Well, you know how hard it is to coordinate schedules. Stellar with the boys' soccer and Evan's work. We just need to have a solid plan. It is easier if we just know the house is ours to use for the season. No more calling back and forth to see who is using it. We want to make this our primary getaway. My mother looked down at her plate. My father cleared his throat. That is actually what we wanted to talk about today, my father said, his voice dropping to a serious register. Your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking. We are getting older. We want to simplify our lives, and we want to see this house go to someone who can really take care of it, someone who uses it for the right reasons. For family. We are going to transfer the deed, my mother said softly. She did not look at me. She looked at Evan. We are going to give the house to Evan. The words hung over the table, suspended in the scent of maple syrup and betrayal. Give, transfer, deed. They spoke these words with such absolute authority. They spoke them as if the power to give this house was theirs to wield. They had constructed an entire moral universe where Evan was the hero who fixed docks and water heaters, and I was the guest who needed to be squeezed into the schedule. I looked at the empty chair again, the witness, the notary. So I said, carefully slicing a piece of pancake, "You're signing the papers today?" "Yes," my father said, puffing out his chest. "Our attorney will be here any minute. We want to make it official, keep it in the family, ensure the legacy survives." "And I suppose," Evan said, a smug grin spreading across his face, "that this means I will be taking over the tax bills too." "I am ready for that. Dad, I have already looked at the numbers. It is a sacrifice, but I'm willing to do it for the boys." "That is my boy," my father said. I chewed slowly. The food tasted like ash. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the table over and scream that I had paid the taxes for the last 8 years. I wanted to tell them that the family contribution checks they sent me every year did not even cover the landscaping, let alone the insurance. I wanted to tell them that the reason the house was still standing was because I had poured nearly $100,000 into the foundation when it started to sink 5 years ago. A crisis I had shielded them from because I did not want them to worry. But I did not scream. I did not throw the table in my line of work. You do not detonate the bomb the moment you find it. You wait. You analyze the circuit. You find the primary trigger, and you let the enemy think they are safe until the very last second. It is a generous gift, I said quietly. It is the right thing to do, my mother said, her voice wavering, trying to convince herself. Evan needs the space, and you will, Stellar. You are so busy with your work. You are barely here. I am here almost every weekend in the winter to check the pipes. I am here to meet the arborists. I am here to pay the bills. I understand, I said. And I did understand. I understood perfectly. They chose the image of success over the reality of it. They chose the loud son over the quiet daughter. They chose the illusion of the traditional family over the woman who actually footed the bill. Suddenly, the sound of gravel crunching outside broke the tension. Another car had arrived. My father checked his watch. That must be her. That is Clara. Clara, I asked. Clara Benton? My father said. She is the attorney handling the transfer. She comes highly recommended. She said she wanted to review the deed personally before we signed. My heart did not speed up. It slowed down. It dropped into a deep, rhythmic thud that echoed in my ears. I knew that name. I knew Clara Benton. But my parents did not know that I knew her. I looked out the window. A sleek black sedan had pulled up next to Evan's monstrosity of an SUV. The door opened. A woman in a sharp navy suit stepped out. She carried a thick leather briefcase. She looked at the house. Then she looked at the lake, and finally her eyes seemed to lock onto the window where I was sitting. The game was about to change. My parents thought they were holding a coronation for their son. They thought they were handing over a crown. They had no idea that the kingdom had been under new management for a very long time. I wiped my mouth with the linen napkin, folded it neatly, and placed it next to my plate. "Well," I said, my voice steady, betraying nothing of the storm inside me. "We should not keep the attorney waiting." Clara Benton did not knock. She rang the doorbell, a single decisive chime that cut through the low murmur of my family's self-congratulatory chatter. When my father opened the door, the woman who stepped inside brought the temperature of the room down by 10. She was a striking woman in her 50s, wearing a charcoal suit that looked like it had been tailored with a scalpel. Her hair was pulled back into a severe knot, and she carried a thick leather briefcase that seemed to weigh more than my nephews combined. She did not smile. She did not offer the usual pleasantries about the weather or the drive up from the city. She simply nodded to my father, acknowledged my mother with a brief inclination of her head, and then walked toward the dining table. "Mr. And Mrs. Powell, she said. Her voice was dry, like paper sliding against paper. I have the documents prepared as requested. Wonderful, Clara. Just wonderful, my father said, ushering her in. He was practically vibrating with excitement. Please sit down. Can I get you some coffee, Linder? Get Clara a cup. No coffee, Clara said. She sat in the empty chair I had been staring at earlier. She placed the briefcase on the table, the metal clasps clicking loudly in the sudden silence. I prefer to get straight to business. I have a tight schedule this afternoon. Evan straightened his posture, puffing out his chest. He shot a look at his wife, Kendra. A look that said, "This is it." Kendra reached out and squeezed his hand, her knuckles white, her eyes locked on the leather case as if it contained the crown jewels. My mother fluttered around, moving the syrup pitcher and the butter dish to make room for the legal proceedings. Of course, Clara, we appreciate you coming all this way on a Saturday. We just wanted to make sure this was done right with the whole family here to witness it. Witness it, I repeated softly. Clara turned her head and looked at me. It was the first time she had acknowledged my presence. Her eyes were dark and unreadable, but for a fleeting second I saw a flicker of something behind her professional mask. It might have been curiosity. It might have been pity. "And you are stellar?" she stated, not asking. "I am," I said. "Good," Clara said. She turned back to the briefcase and snapped the latches open. My father cleared his throat, commanding the room's attention. He stood up, placing one hand on the back of Evan's chair. It was a tableau of patriarchal succession, framed perfectly by the window overlooking the lake. "We have gathered everyone here today because this is a momentous occasion," my father began. He was using his speech-giving voice, the one he used at retirement parties and Rotary Club meetings. "This house, Foxglove Lake House, has been in the Powell family for 2 generations. My father bought this land. I built the memories here, and now it is time to pass the torch." He looked down at Evan with eyes shining with pride. "Your mother and I have decided that the best way to protect this legacy is to place it in the hands of someone who represents the future of this family, someone who has built a home of his own, who is raising the next generation of Powells. Today, we are signing the deed to transfer full ownership of this property to Evan." There it was. The words were out. They hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My mother nodded vigorously, tears welling in her eyes. "We are so proud of you, Evan. You have worked so hard. You deserve this." I sat very still. My hands were folded in my lap. I could feel the texture of the denim of my jeans against my palms. I forced myself to breathe evenly. 1, 2, 3. "Why today?" I asked. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the emotional haze. My parents were spinning. My mother looked at me startled, as if she had forgotten I was there. "What do you mean, honey?" "I mean, why is today the day?" I asked, looking directly at her. "You are both healthy. You are barely 60. You could hold on to this house for another 20 years. Why the rush to transfer the deed now?" My mother sighed, a sound that suggested I was being difficult on purpose. "Oh, Stellar, you know how the market is. We want to simplify our estate, and frankly, we want to see Evan enjoy it while the boys are young. It feels right. Everything has just come together. Evan is settled. He has proven himself. Proven himself, I said, by getting a promotion, by being a steady, reliable man," my father interjected, his voice sharpening, "by showing that he values family. This isn't just about money, Stellar. It is about character. It is about who shows up." The irony was so acidic it burned my throat. Who shows up? I was the one who drove up in blizzards to check for frozen pipes. I was the one who met the septic tank guys at 7 in the morning on a Tuesday. Evan showed up for barbecues and boat rides. Evan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. He gave me a look that was a mixture of pity and condescension. It was the look a winner gives to a sore loser. "Look, Stellar," Evan said, his voice dripping with magnanimity. "I know this might feel a little sudden to you, but you do not need to worry. Nothing is really going to change for you." "Is that so?" I asked. "Of course," he said, smiling benevolently. "You will still be able to come up here. You are my sister. You are always welcome. All we ask is that you give us a heads up. You know, Just check in with us before you drive up. We might have friends over, or we might want a quiet weekend with just the kids. We just need to coordinate, but you can definitely visit. Visit. The word landed like a physical blow for 8 years. I had walked through these doors as the owner. I had chosen the paint colors. I had authorized the repairs. I had slept in the master bedroom when no one else was here. Now my brother was granting me permission to visit the house I had saved from foreclosure. He was demoting me. In one sentence, he had stripped away my agency and reduced me to a guest in my own sanctuary. And the worst part was he thought he was being generous. "Thank you, Evan," I said, my voice flat. "That is very kind of you." "We are family," he said, spreading his hands. "That is what family does." Kendra, who had been vibrating with suppressed energy, finally could not hold back any longer. She turned to the lawyer, then back to the room, her eyes bright with acquisition. "It is going to be such a project, but a fun one," Kendra said. "Evan and I have already been looking at contractors. The kitchen is the first thing to go. Those cabinets are ancient. We want to rip everything out, put in a massive island, maybe some white marble countertops. Really open it up." My mother flinched again. She loved those cabinets. They were solid oak. "And the furniture," Kendra continued, waving a hand at the living room. "It is all a bit dated. No offense, Linder. But we want something sleeker, more modern farmhouse. We want to class it up a bit. Make it look like those places you see on Instagram." "It will cost a fortune," my father warned gently. "Oh, we have a plan for that," Kendra said, beaming. "We were thinking since we won't be using it every single week, we could list it on one of those vacation rental sites just for a few peak weeks in the summer. The income would cover the property taxes and the renovation costs. It pays for itself." I felt a cold spike of anger in my chest. Commercialization, strangers tramping through the house, sleeping in the beds, treating the lake like a party venue. That was exactly what my grandfather had feared. That was exactly what I had promised never to do. "You want to rent it out?" I asked just occasionally, Evans said, shrugging. I nut. "It is a prime asset. It is stupid to let it sit empty when it could be generating revenue. That is just smart business. Stellar, I would not expect you to understand the real estate market, but passive income is key." He was lecturing me on business. Me, the woman who built a data security firm from the ground up while he was still partying in college. "I see," I said. "So, the plan is to gut the house and turn it into a hotel." "Do not be dramatic," Evan snapped. "We are upgrading it. We are making it an asset that works for us." Clara cleared her throat. The sound was sharp, cutting off Evan's speech. She had pulled a stack of documents from her briefcase and arranged them in a precise fan on the table. "If we are done discussing interior design," Clara said, her tone devoid of warmth, "we have legal matters to attend to." "Right, right," my father said, adjusting his glasses. "Where do we sign?" Clara placed a heavy document in the center of the table. It was not the deed transfer my father was expecting. It was a thick binder bound in blue legal paper. She rested her hand on top of it, preventing anyone from touching it. "Before anyone signs anything," Clara said, "I have a duty of due diligence. I need to ensure that all parties understand exactly what is being transferred and the current legal status of the property in question." "We know the status," Evan said impatiently. "Mom and Dad own it. They are giving it to me. It is simple." "Real estate is rarely simple, Mr. Powell," Clara said. She did not look at him. She looked at me. I held her gaze. I saw the question in her eyes, the silent confirmation she was waiting for. She knew. She had done her research. She had pulled the title search. She had seen the history. She was giving me the choice to stop this now, or to let them walk into the trap they had set for themselves. I leaned forward slightly. The smell of bacon and coffee had turned sour in the room. "Actually," I said, "Clara is right. We should be thorough." I turned to the lawyer. "Clara, could you please read out the current ownership status of the property as listed in the county registry, just so we are all on the same page before my parents sign away something they believe is theirs?" My father laughed nervously. "Stella, what are you talking about? We have the deed right here in the safe. Or we did until we gave the copies to the lawyer. The registry is the only thing that matters, Gary, my mother said, trying to soothe him, though she looked confused. Let her read it. It is just a formality. Evan rolled his eyes. God, you always have to complicate things. Stellar, fine. Read the paper. Clara, tell us what we already know so I can start measuring for the new deck. Clara did not move her hand from the file. She looked at Evan, then at my parents, and finally back at me. Her expression remained impassive, but there was a sharpness to her movements now. She opened the blue folder. The room went silent. The only sound was the rustle of paper. The document prepared for signature today, Clara began, her voice clear and authoritative as a quitclaim deed intended to transfer interest from Gary and Linda Powell to Evan Powell. Exactly, my father said. However, Clara continued, her voice dropping an octave, becoming harder. As an officer of the court, I cannot facilitate a transfer of property if the grantors do not hold the title they are attempting to convey. What does that mean? Kendra asked, her smile faltering. That sounds like legal mumbo-jumbo. It means, Clara said, looking up from the page, that before we proceed with any transfer, I need to confirm the identity of the legal owner. She paused. The silence stretched, thin and brittle, ready to snap. Because according to the county records, Clara said, Gary and Linda Powell do not own this house. The name hung in the air like a guillotine blade that had just dropped. Stellar Powell, Clara Benton did not shout it. She did not dramatize it. She simply read it from the document in front of her, her voice devoid of any theatrical flair. That lack of emotion made the impact worse. It made it a fact, a cold, hard, immutable fact. The current owner of record for Foxglove Lake House is Stellar Powell. The reaction was instant. It was physical. My mother's hand went slack. The linen napkin she had been holding fluttered to the floor, landing softly on her shoe. She did not move to pick it up. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open, her eyes wide and vacant, as if her brain could not process the signal coming from her ears. My father stood up. He did not rise gracefully. He shot up from his chair so fast that the legs scraped violently against the hardwood floor, a screech that made everyone WSE. His face flushed a dark, dangerous red. That is impossible, he said. His voice was guttural. That is absolutely impossible. I built this house. My father bought this land. I have the keys in my pocket. Evan let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a bark of disbelief. He looked at Clara, then at me, shaking his head as if we were telling a bad joke that had gone on too long. Okay, very funny, Evan said. He leaned back, crossing his arms, trying to regain the dominance he had held 30 seconds ago. Is this some kind of prank? Did you pay the lawyer to say this, Stellar? Because it is not a good one. Clara did not dignify him with a verbal response. She reached into the blue folder and pulled out a single sheet of heavy cream-colored paper. It had a gold foil seal at the bottom and a blue ink stamp in the corner. She slid it across the polished wood of the table. It stopped directly in front of my father. This is a certified copy of the warranty deed, Clara said. Recorded with the county clerk 8 years ago. Please look at the Jar and the grintee. My father looked down. His hands were shaking. He picked up the paper as if it were radioactive. Evan leaned over his shoulder, his confident smirk vanishing as he read the text. Grantor Gary and Linda Powell, Evan read aloud, his voice stumbling. Grantee Wren Hollow Holdings, LSA. He looked up confused. Who is Wren Hollow Holdings? I am, I said. The room turned to me. Wren Hollow Holdings is a limited liability company I formed 9 years ago. I said calmly. I am the sole member. I bought the house from Grandpa's estate trust just before he passed away. Dad, you signed the transfer papers as the executive. Do you remember? You thought you were signing a refinance agreement to clear the liens. My father's face went pale. The memory was coming back to him, distorted by time and his own lack of attention to detail. He had been overwhelmed then. He had trusted the paperwork. He had not read the fine print. I signed a restructuring deal. My father stammered. To save the house from the bank was going to take it. The bank was going to take it, I confirmed, because you and Grandpa were 3 years behind on the mortgage and the property taxes were in default. I paid the bank. I paid the back taxes. I bought the asset out of the red and I put it in an LLC to protect it. You stole it, Evan hissed. He slammed his hand on the table. You tricked them. I bought it. I corrected him. My voice was ice. I paid full market value at the time. The money went to pay off the debts you all ignored. If I had not bought it 8 years ago, strangers would be living here today, or it would be a parking lot. Evan grabbed the deed from my father's hand. He scanned it frantically, looking for a loophole, a mistake, anything to tear down the reality that was closing in on him. But we pay taxes, Evan shouted. He looked at Clara, his face twisting with righteous indignation. We send checks every year. Dad asks for the share of the taxes and insurance, and I write a check. Kendra writes a check. We have been paying for this house. Clara adjusted her glasses. She opened a second file in her folder. This one was full of spreadsheets. Mr. Powell, Clara said, addressing Evan, I have reviewed the financial records provided by your sister. You do indeed send checks to a family account managed by your father. See, Evan yelled. I am an owner. I pay for it. However, Clara continued, her voice cutting through his volume like a razor. Those checks are designated as, and I quote from your own memo lines, family contribution or house fund. They are not mortgage payments. They are not tax payments made to the county. It is the same thing, Evan argued. It is not, Clara said. I have done the math over the last 8 years. The total amount you have contributed averages out to approximately $1,200 per year. Evan froze. 1,200. Clara repeated. That amounts to $100 a month. I watched the color drain from Kendra's face. She knew what things cost. She knew that $100 a month did not buy a lake house. It barely bought a cable subscription. The annual property taxes on this parcel, Clara read from the spreadsheet, are currently $12,400. The hazard insurance is another $3,000. The flood insurance is $2,000. The landscaping contract is $4,000. Clara looked up. Your contribution covers roughly 5% of the operating costs of this property. The remaining 95% has been paid directly from the accounts of Rand Hollow Holdings, which is to say, by Stellar. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the silence of a math problem that could not be solved with ego. But my mother whispered. She looked at me with betrayal in her eyes. Stellar, you let us think. You let us believe we were still in charge. Why? Why would you do that? Because you wanted to be in charge, I said, and I wanted the house to be safe. It was easier to let you play owner than to fight you on it, as long as the bills were paid. I did not care whose name you thought was on the mailbox. You lied to us, my father said. He sank back into his chair, looking deflated. For 8 years, I omitted the truth. I said, there is a difference. You never asked. You assumed. You assumed that because I was quiet, I was passive. You assumed that because Evan was loud, he was paying. I just let you keep your assumptions. Kendra stood up slowly. She looked around the room at the walls she had planned to knock down, at the kitchen she had planned to gut. Her expression shifted from shock to a simmering petty rage. So, Kendra said, her voice trembling, all those weekends, all those times we came up here, we swept the floors, we wired the leaves, we cleaned the bathrooms. She turned her glare on me. We were working for you. We were free labor. You let us scrub your toilets. I never asked you to scrub anything. I said you came here for vacations. You stayed for free. You used the boat. You used the water. You ate the food. If you chose to sweep the floor, it was because you were staying in a house that you enjoyed. That is not labor, Kendra. That is basic courtesy. That is what guests do. We were not guests, she shrieked. We were family. We were owners. You were family. I said, you were never owners. Evan stepped toward me. His fists were clenched at his sides. The veins in his neck were bulging. The family man mask had slipped completely, revealing the bully underneath. You manipulated everyone, Evan spat. You sat there in your cheap apartment, driving your cheap car, laughing at us. You let us invest our hearts into this place while you held the piece of paper. What kind of person does that? What kind of sister does that? The kind who knows you would have sold it, I said. The accusation hit him hard. He blinked. "I would not have sold it," Evan shouted. "I wanted to keep it in the family." "You wanted to monetize it," I countered. "You just said it 10 minutes ago. You wanted to rent it to strangers. You wanted to turn it into a cash cow. Grandpa would have hated that. Dad knows it." I looked at my father. He looked away. He knew I was right. His father, my grandfather, had been adamant. The house is a sanctuary, not a business. "And the money," Evan demanded. "Where did you get the money?" "Stella, you are a tech support geek. There is no way you paid off the mortgage and the back taxes. Did you steal that, too? Did you embezzle it?" I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Parabolock Systems is not a tech support shop. "Evan," I said, "I am not an employee. I am a founder. We handle data security for 3 of the largest hospital networks in the Midwest. My company was acquired 5 years ago, but I stayed on as a consultant. I did not steal anything. I earned it." Evan looked like he had been slapped. The narrative of his life, that he was the success, the breadwinner, the golden child, was crumbling. He could not process that his little sister, the one he mocked for her old car, could buy and sell him 3 times over. "It does not matter," Evan said, grasping at straws. "Dad and Mom are the ones who put the blood, sweat, and tears into this place. You just wrote checks. You do not understand what it means to care for a house." "I do not understand," I asked. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small black notebook. I tossed it onto the table. "Open it," I said. Evan stared at it. "Open it," I commanded. He flipped it open. "Page 1, I said. "October, 4 years ago. The seam wall was collapsing. The contractor wanted $40,000 to install steel pylons. Dad said he couldn't afford it. He told the contractor to just dump some rocks there. Remember?" My father flinched. I called the contractor back. I said I authorized the steel pylons. I paid the $40,000. If I hadn't, the boathouse would be underwater right now. "Page 5. I continued, "the oak tree that was leaning over the roof. Dad said it was fine. The arborist said it was a widow-maker. I paid $3,000 to have it removed and the stump ground down while you were all on vacation in Florida." "Page 10, I said, my voice rising slightly. "The septic system failure, the roof leaks, the furnace replacement. I have spent $150,000 on capital improvements in the last 8 years. That is not including the taxes. That is not including the purchase price." I looked at Evan directly in the eyes. "So do not tell me about blood, sweat, and tears. Evan, you bought some paint. You fixed a loose board on the dock. I kept the roof over your head. I kept the ground under your feet. I saved this house while you were busy playing pretend." Evan stood there, panting slightly. He looked at the notebook, then at the deed, then at his wife. He was cornered. The facts were a wall he could not climb. "It is still wrong," he muttered. "It is morally wrong. You deceived us." "I protected you," I said, "and I protected the house from you." My mother was weeping now, soft, broken sobs. "We just wanted everyone to be happy. We just wanted Evan to have his turn." "His turn to what, Mom?" I asked gently. "To exploit it. To leverage it." Clara closed the blue folder with a sharp snap. The sound echoed in the room like a gavel. She placed her hand flat on the leather cover. The room felt cold. The sunlight streaming in through the windows seemed to have lost its warmth. The view of the lake, the view they had all just been fighting over, sat serene and indifferent in the background. Evan looked at Clara. "So that is it. Game over. She owns it and we get nothing." Clara looked at him over the rim of her glasses. Her expression was grave. She did not pack up her briefcase. She did not stand up to leave. She simply rested her hands on the table, her fingers interlaced. "Mr. Powell," Clara said, "we have established the ownership. That is the first step." She paused, letting the weight of her next words gather in the air. "But the deed is not the only document in this file," Clara said. "And what comes next is not about who owns the house. It is about what happens when people try to claim what is not theirs." She looked at the second thinner file that was still sitting at the bottom of her briefcase. "This is not just a dispute about property," Clara said. "I have found irregularities, serious ones. And this is not the entire documentation." The silence that followed was not the silence of shock, It was the silence of fear. The silence that followed Clara's revelation was not the stunned silence of a surprise party. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a funeral, where the casket has just been lowered and the reality of the loss finally hits the back of the throat. My mother, Linder, was the first to break it. She did not scream. She did not yell. She simply crumbled. Her shoulders slumped forward, and she covered her face with her hands, her weeping quiet and jagged. All this time she sobbed into her palms. All this time, Stellar, we sent you grocery store gift cards for Christmas. We slipped you $50 when you visited because we thought you were barely scraping by. I know, Mom, I said softly. You let us worry, she said, looking up, her eyes red and rimmed with a pain that had nothing to do with real estate and everything to do with trust. I have laid awake at night, Stellar, terrified that you would lose your apartment, terrified that you did not have health insurance and you were buying this house. I have health insurance, Mom, I said. I have always had health insurance. That is not the point, she cried out, her voice cracking. The point is that you watched us pity you. You sat there at Thanksgiving and let Evan lecture you about 401 KS and you just nodded. Did you laugh at us when you drove home? Did you think we were stupid? No, I said firmly. I never thought you were stupid. I thought you were parents. You worry. That is what you do. But if I had told you the truth, if I had told you 10 years ago that Harballock Systems had just signed a contract with the federal government, what would have changed? I looked at Evan. He was pacing by the fireplace now, unable to sit still, his face a mask of fury. Everything would have changed. I answered my own question. The dynamic would have shifted. Suddenly, I would not be Stellar the daughter. I would be Stellar the bank, Stellar the safety net. I wanted a relationship with you, not a transaction. My father, Gary, was staring at me as if I were a stranger who had just walked in off the street. He looked older than he had 10 minutes ago. The bluster, the patriarchal confidence had evaporated. How? He asked, his voice raspy. I know you work in computers, but to buy this place, to pay off the liens, we are talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Stellar, how does a girl who drives a 5-year-old sedan have that kind of money? I drive a sedan because it works. Dad, I said, I live in a small apartment because I travel for work constantly and I hate cleaning. I do not buy things I do not need. I took a breath. I hated talking about this. I had spent a decade cultivating a life of quiet anonymity precisely to avoid this conversation. Harballock creates encryption protocols for patient data, I explained, keeping it simple. We were one of the first to market when the new privacy laws hit. The company did well, very well. When we were acquired, I retained equity. I am not a billionaire, Dad, but I am comfortable. I could have bought a house in the Hamptons if I wanted to. I chose to save this one instead. You deceived us, Evan snapped. He stopped pacing and pointed a finger at me. You can dress it up with your noble eyelid simply speech all you want, but you lied. You let Dad and Mom think they own this place. You let me think I was inheriting it. I never told you that you were inheriting it, I said. You knew I thought it, Evan shouted. I have been talking about it for years. When I take over the lake house, when the boys spend their summers here, you heard me say it 1,000 times, Stellar, and you never said a word. You let me plan my life around a lie. I let you plan your life around an assumption. I corrected him. There is a difference. Is there? Evan challenged. I have been looking at boat loans, Stellar. I have been looking at contractors. I promised Kendra we would have this place. I promised my sons. Who promised you, Evan? I asked. The question hung in the air. But he snarled. Who promised you the house? I asked again, my voice steady. Did Dad sign a contract with you 5 years ago? Did Mom put it in writing? Or did you just decide that because you are the son, because you have the wife and the kids and the stable job, that it was naturally yours? Did you assume that because I am the single childless sister, I would just fade into the background? Evan's jaw worked, but no sound came out. He was struggling because he knew the answer. No one had legally promised him anything. He had simply inhaled the entitlement from the air in our family home. He had assumed it was his birthright because that is how the world had always worked for him. It is a legacy, Evan muttered finally, his argument weak. It is supposed to pass to the family. It is in the family, I said. I am family. Kendra, who had been sitting in stunned silence, suddenly stood up. Her face was blotchy, her composure gone. The modern farmhouse renovation was crumbling in her mind, replaced by the reality that she was standing in her sister-in-law's living room. You enjoyed this, Kendra spat. Her voice was venomous. You are sitting there so calm, so superior. You wanted to humiliate us. That is what this is, isn't it? You wanted to wait until the very last second, until we were all excited, just to pull the rug out. You want to be the queen of the castle. I do not want to be a queen, I said wearily. I just want the house to not fall into the lake, and I want to make sure it is not turned into an airbnb for bachelorette parties. We were going to improve it, Kendra yelled. You were going to exploit it, I said. I turned to Clara. The agreement, please. Clara reached into her briefcase again. She pulled out two bound documents, thinner than the deed, but just as official. She slid one toward my father and one toward my mother. What is this? My father asked, looking at the paper wearily. It is a lifetime use agreement, I said. My parents looked at me confused. I did not do this to kick you out, I said, feeling a lump rise in my throat. Despite everything, despite their favoritism, despite their blindness, I love them. I bought the house to save it for you. This document guarantees that for the rest of your lives, you have the exclusive right to use Foxglove Lake House. You can come here whenever you want. You can stay as long as you want. You can host Christmas, Thanksgiving, 4th of July. Nothing changes for you. Mom, Dad, you can still fish off the dock every morning if you want to. My mother picked up the document, her hands trembling. You are letting us stay. I am not letting you do anything, I said. It is your home. It always has been. I just hold the paper to make sure the bank doesn't take it and to make sure the taxes are paid. My father read the first page. I saw his shoulders drop about 2 in. The relief was physical. He had been terrified. I realized that his daughter was about to evict him. Lifetime right of survivorship. My father read. Grantors. Gary and Linda Powell retain full access and use. See, I said gently. I am not the villain here. I just want to protect the asset. Evan snatched the document from my father's hand. He scanned it aggressively, his eyes darting back and forth, looking for the catch, looking for the trap. Wait a second, Evan said, his finger stabbing at a paragraph on the second page. What is this? Clause 4, limitations on guests and extended family. Kendra leaned over his shoulder, her eyes narrowing. Read it, I said. Access to the property is guaranteed for the lifetime users. Evan read aloud, his voice rising in disbelief. Guests and extended family members are permitted to visit only when accompanied by a lifetime user or the owner. Unaccompanied use by extended family members is strictly prohibited without prior written consent from the owner. Commercial use, subletting, or short-term rental of the property is strictly prohibited. Evan looked up, his face turning a shade of purple I had never seen before. Extended family, he whispered. You are calling me extended family, in the eyes of the law, regarding this property. Yes, I said. I am your brother, he shouted. I am their son. I am not a guest. I am not a cousin from 3 states away. I am immediate family. Not on the deed, Clara interjected coolly, and not in this agreement. The agreement is designed to protect the parents' quiet enjoyment of the property. It prevents the house from being overrun. Overrun by who? Kendra shrieked. By us. By your nephews. By anyone, I said, but yes, the agreement means you cannot just drive up here whenever you feel like it and take over the house for a month. You cannot list it on a rental site. You cannot renovate the kitchen without my permission. You can come here with Mom and Dad. You can come here when I am here. But you do not have the keys to the kingdom anymore. This is insane, Evans said. He threw the document onto the table. It slid across the wood and hit the sugar bowl. You are treating us like children. You are grounding us. I am setting boundaries, I said, something this family has never been good at. You are jealous, Kendra hissed. That is what this is. You are jealous that we have a life, that we have children, so you are using your money to control us. You want us to beg you for permission to bring our kids to the lake. I do not want you to beg, I said. I want you to respect the fact that this is not your house. Come on, Kendra, Evan said abruptly. He grabbed his car keys off the sideboard. We are leaving. Evan, wait. My mother pleaded, standing up. Let's talk about this. Stellar is saying we can still all be together. No, Mom, Evan snapped. She is saying she owns us. She is saying that if I want to bring my boys fishing, I have to ask her permission. I have to apply for a visitor's pass like I'm visiting a prison. I am not doing that. I am not going to be a guest in a house I have been coming to for 30 years. He turned to me. The look in his eyes was pure hatred. It was the look of a man who had been stripped naked in public and blamed the person who handed him a towel. You kept the house, Stellar, Evan said, his voice shaking with rage. Congratulations, you won. But do not expect us to play happy family in your little fortress. If we are extended family, then fine, we will act like it. We will stay away. Evan, please, my father said. Grab the boys, Kendra, Evan ordered. Kendra grabbed her designer bag. She looked at me one last time. You're going to die alone in this house, Stella, and you will deserve it. They stormed out. I heard them yelling for Leo and Sam, who had been playing in the yard. I heard the confused protests of the children, the slamming of car doors, and then the aggressive roar of Evan's engine. Gravel crunched, tires spun, and then the sound faded away. The house fell silent. It was a profound ringing silence, the kind that settles in after a bomb has gone off. I sat at the table. My coffee was cold. Across from me, my parents sat like statues. My mother was wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. My father was staring at the lifetime use agreement, his fingers tracing the legal language, trying to reconcile the legal reality with the emotional wreckage of his morning. Flora Benton sat quietly, her hands folded on her file. She did not speak. She gave us the space to breathe in the dust of the explosion. He is gone, my mother whispered. He is angry, I said. He will cool down. I do not think so, my father said softly. He looked up at me. His eyes were full of a terrible mixture of gratitude and shame. He has a lot of pride. Stellar, you know that. You heard his pride. His pride was writing checks his bank account couldn't cash. I said, I just stopped him from bouncing them. My father nodded slowly. He knew I was right, but knowing I was right didn't make it hurt any less. We need a moment, my father said. Just a moment. Take all the time you need, I said. I stood up and walked to the window. I watched the dust settling on the driveway where Evan's car had been. The lake was calm. The water rippled gently against the dock I had paid for. The dock that was safe to walk on. The house was mine. The parents were safe. But the family had just been rewritten and the ink was still wet and messy. And I knew with a sinking feeling in my gut that Evan wasn't just driving away. He was regrouping. He wasn't the type to walk away from a fight. He was the type to come back with a bigger weapon. I turned back to the room where the empty chairs at the breakfast table looked like tombstones. Clara, I said quietly, what is next? The dust from Evan's departure settled slowly, leaving a stillness in the house that felt less like peace and more like the vacuum after a depressurization. My parents sat on the sofa, holding hands, looking small and aged by the morning's violence. They were whispering to each other, trying to reconstruct their reality, trying to find a way to forgive the son who had just stormed out while simultaneously processing the fact that their daughter had been their silent landlord for nearly a decade. Flora Benton did not offer them false comfort. She was packing her briefcase with the efficient, unsentimental movements of a surgeon cleaning up after a procedure. She snapped the latches shut. The metallic click loud in the quiet room. I will give you some time, Clara said to my parents, her voice respectful but distant. We can finalize the signatures on the lifetime use agreement next week. I imagine you have had enough legal discourse for one day. Thank you, Clara, my father said, not looking up. Clara signaled for me to walk her to her car. I followed her out into the crisp Michigan air. The sun was high now, reflecting off Willowstone Lake and blinding diamonds of light. Indifferent to the human wreckage inside the house at her car. Clara did not immediately get in. She reached into the passenger seat and pulled out a thick manila envelope that she had not placed on the dining table. Stellar, she said, handing it to me. The deed was the shield. This is the sword. I did not want to open this inside. Your parents are not ready for it. Frankly, I am not sure you are. What is it? I asked, feeling the weight of the paper in my hand. It is the complete history of the lien you paid off. Flores said when you bought the house 8 years ago, you focused on the payoff amount. You wired the money, cleared the title, and moved on. You were in crisis mode. You wanted to save your grandfather's legacy. I nodded. Grantor was dying. The bank was calling every day. I just wanted the harassment to stop. Exactly. Flores said you looked at the bottom line. You did not look at how the line got there. I took the liberty of pulling the origination documents for that loan, the home equity line of credit that nearly cost you this property. She looked at me, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. Read the timeline. Stellar. Look at the dates of the withdrawals and then ask yourself why a man who lived on Social Security and never spent a dime on himself suddenly needed $50,000 in cash 3 months before he went into the hospital. Clara got into her car. Call me when you see it. She drove away, the gravel crunching under her tires, leaving me standing in the driveway with the ghost of a crime in my hands. I did not go back inside immediately. I walked down to the boathouse. It was cold, the air smelling of pine needles and damp wood. I sat on the bench facing the water, the envelope resting on my knees. My heart was beating a slow, heavy rhythm. I opened the clasp. Inside were photocopies of bank statements, loan applications, and canceled checks from 8 years ago. The paper smelled of toner and old secrets. I remembered that year vividly. Grandpa Arthur had been deteriorating rapidly. It was a chaotic blur of doctors, hospice evaluations, and the terrifying realization that he had no savings left. I remembered the phone call I got from him late one night. He was crying. He was a man who never cried, but he was sobbing into the receiver, telling me he was sorry that he had lost the house. He told me the bank was going to take it. He did not call Evan. He called me at the time. I thought he was just confused, overwhelmed by medical bills. I thought the debt was a slow accumulation of years of poverty. I looked at the documents in my lap. The home equity line of credit, the Helilock, had been opened 18 months before he died. The initial draw was modest $5,000, likely for roof repairs or property taxes. That made sense. But then I saw the spike. 6 months before Grandpa died, there was a withdrawal of $20,000. 4 months before he died, another withdrawal, $15,000. 3 months before he died, $10,000. In the span of 90 days, $45,000 had been drained from the equity of the house. I stared at the numbers. Grandpa was already homebound by then. His world had shrunk to his bedroom and the porch. He wasn't traveling. He wasn't gambling. He wasn't buying luxury cars. His medical bills were covered largely by Medicare, and the gaps were not big enough to explain $45,000 in 3 months. Where did the money go? I flipped to the next page. The withdrawal slips. They were signed by Grantor. His signature was shaky. The loops of the M are trembling, a testament to his Parkinson's. But below his signature on the line for authorized third party or witness, there was nothing, just his name. But money leaves a trail. I knew this. It was the foundation of my career. Data does not disappear. It just moves. I pulled out my phone. I had backed up Grandpa's old computer years ago. I had archived his emails, thinking they would be sentimental keepsakes, recipes, fishing reports, letters to old war buddies. I had never looked at them with a forensic eye. I logged into the encrypted cloud server where I kept my personal archives. I searched for the dates corresponding to the withdrawals. Search query bank or loan or transfer. Date range Jan 1, 2016, June 2016. The results populated. Most were automated notifications. Statement ready. Payment due. But there was one email thread that stood out. It was from a generic address. Turning Point Financial. I opened it. The subject line read, Reinvestment Opportunity, Liquidity Strategy. The email was addressed to Grandpa, but the tone was wrong. It was too corporate, too aggressive for a conversation with an 80-year-old retired mechanic. Arthur, as discussed, the market is prime for this entry. If we leverage the equity now, we can double the return within 6 months. The liquidity is sitting there doing nothing. Let's put it to work. I have the papers ready. I can swing by on Tuesday to help you sign." I scrolled down to Grandpa's reply. "I don't know. A house is all I have. I don't want to risk it." And then the reply from the advisor. "There is no risk if we move fast. Trust me, I am doing this for the family. You want to leave something behind that is worth more, don't you? Let me handle the paperwork. You know I have your back." I froze. "You know I have your back." The syntax, the rhythm of the sentences. It was not the voice of a stranger. It was not a random scammer from the internet. I searched the email address Turning Point Financial. It was a dead domain. It didn't exist anymore. But I ran a Yocho lookup on the historical registration data. It was a skill I used daily at HarborLock to track hackers. The domain had been registered to a P.O. box in Chicago, but the recovery email address was a Gmail account. epowerpal80@gmail.com. I felt the air leave my lungs. Evan, my brother, born in 1982. I dropped the phone on the bench next to me. The world tilted slightly on its axis. It wasn't just a responsibility. It wasn't just that Evan was bad with money or entitled. This was predation. I closed my eyes and the memory rushed back that spring. The spring before Grandpa died. I was working 80-hour weeks launching HarborLock. I was absent, but Evan was suddenly very present. I remembered Mom praising him at Easter dinner that year. "Evan is being so good to Grandpa. She had said he goes over there every Tuesday to help him with his bills. He is helping him organize his estate." Organize his estate. Evan had set up a shell email address. He had posed as a financial advisor to his own grandfather. He had convinced a confused, dying old man to drain the equity out of the only asset he owned, likely promising him some miracle investment scheme that would double the money. And then the money vanished, the $45,000. It wasn't in Grandpa's accounts when he died. There was zero balance. Evan had taken it. He had laundered it through this fake investment and pocketed it. And when the scheme inevitably collapsed, or when he simply spent the money, the bank came for the house, and who stepped in to save it? I did. I paid off the debt that Evan created. I sat there for a long time. The anger that rose in me was different from the annoyance I had felt at breakfast. This was a cold, dark fury. Evan had let me pay off his theft. For 8 years, he had watched me pour money into this house, knowing that a huge chunk of my initial investment was just covering his tracks. He had stood in the kitchen this morning eating pancakes, lecturing me about family legacy while knowing that he had almost destroyed that legacy for $45,000. Why, what did he need the money for back then? I did the math 8 years ago. That was the year Evan bought his first house, the down payment. He had always bragged about how he scraped and saved for that down payment. He lied. He stole it from Grandpa's walls. I picked up the phone and dialed Clara. She answered on the first ring. "You found it," Clara said. "The withdrawals," I said, my voice sounding mechanical. $45,000. It coincides with the time Evan was helping Grandpa with his finances. I noticed the witness signature on one of the bank documents. Clara said it was illegible, but the notary stamp belonged to a woman who used to work at the bank branch in town. I called her yesterday. She is retired now. She remembers Arthur and she remembers his grandson, the charismatic one. She called him. She said the grandson did all the talking. Said Arthur seemed coached. He stole the equity. I said he drained the house before Grandpa even died. And that, Clara said, is why the deed is not the only issue. This is elder financial abuse. Stella, it is a crime. The statute of limitations for the criminal act might be tricky given the time past, but civilly, and in terms of moral standing regarding the estate, it is a nuclear bomb. Does he know that you know? I asked. He knows. I suspect, Clara said. That is why he ran. He saw the files. He knows what is in that history. He was gambling that you wouldn't look, that you would just be the good sister who pays the bills and doesn't ask questions. He was wrong, I said. What do you want to do? Clara asked. Do you want to tell your parents? I looked up at the house. I could see my mother moving in the kitchen, washing the dishes. My father was sitting on the deck, staring at the water. They looked shattered. They had just lost the illusion of their son's success. If I told them this, if I told them that Evan had effectively robbed his own grandfather and left him to die in debt, it wouldn't just break their hearts. It would destroy them. It would poison every memory they had of the last 8 years. They would never recover from the shame of having raised a predator. No, I said. Not yet, Seller. Clara warned. Holding this back is dangerous. He will not stop. He will attack you. I know, I said. But if I drop this bomb now, I'd lose my parents too. They will resent me for being the one to show them the monster. I need to handle this. I need to corner him so tightly that he has no choice but to back down without me having to destroy Mom and Dad. You are playing a dangerous game, Clara said. I am in the security business, Clara. I said, I know how to contain a threat. Very well, she said, but keep that file safe and stellar. Watch your back. A narcissist who is exposed is the most dangerous thing on earth. We hung up. I sat there for another hour, watching the sun dip lower. The water turned from blue to a steel gray. I walked back up to the house. I hid the envelope in the bottom of my laptop bag, beneath my cables and hard drives. I went into the kitchen. I made some tea, my mother said softly. She looked at me with red, puffy eyes. Are you hungry? There are still pancakes. I'm okay, Mom, I said. I hugged her. She felt frail. I am sorry about Evan, she whispered. He just has a temper. He loves this place so much. He just got carried away. She was still making excuses. She was still stitching the narrative back together, trying to make the pieces fit. He loves this place. She had no idea he had cannibalized it. I let her have her illusion for one more day. It has been a long day, I said. Why don't you guys go rest? I will clean up here. My father nodded. We are going to lie down for a bit. Thank you, Stella, for everything, for saving the house. It is okay, Dad, I said. They went upstairs. I heard their bedroom door close. I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of the coronation breakfast. The royal Doulton plates were stacked in the sink. The syrup pitcher was sticky. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A single sharp vibration. I pulled it out. It was a text message from a number I did not have saved, but the area code was local. I stared at the screen. The message was short. You think you won? The deed is just the start. You have no idea what you just started. Watch yourself. I didn't reply. I didn't block the number. I simply took a screenshot and saved it to the same encrypted folder where I had stored the evidence of his theft. I looked out the window at the driveway where his car had been. I know exactly what I started. Evan, I whispered to the empty room, and I am the one who is going to finish it. The war did not begin with a bang. It began with a notification on my phone at 10:00 on a Tuesday morning. I was in my office at Harbor Lock reviewing the code for a new firewall patch when the family group chat, which I had silenced years ago, but never left, began to ping incessantly. It wasn't the usual stream of birthday wishes or photos of castles. It was a rapid-fire exchange of shocked emojis and questions. Then came a text from my Aunt Marilyn. She was my father's sister, a woman who treated gossip like a competitive sport. Stellar, is it true? Did you really trick Barry and Linda into signing the house over to you? I can't believe you would take advantage of them being old. I stared at the screen. My parents were 62, not 90. They were perfectly capable, but the narrative had already left the station. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened social media. I rarely used it, but I had a burner account I used for background checks on potential hires. I navigated to Kendra's profile. There it was, a photo posted 3 hours ago. It was a black and white shot of her 2 sons, Leo and Sam, standing on the dock of Foxglove Lake House looking out at the water with their backs to the camera. The caption was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive storytelling. Heartbroken today. We spent years pouring our love, sweat, and money into building a legacy for these 2, only to find out that someone we trusted has been hiding assets and manipulating paperwork behind our backs. It is scary how greed can turn family into strangers, praying that the truth comes out and what was stolen is returned. Family first, betrayal calmer. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. The comment section was already ablaze with sympathy from cousins, neighbors, and friends of the family. Oh my God! Is this about the lake house? I thought Evan was taking that over. Some people have no shame. Stay strong, Mama Bear. I felt a cold tightening in my chest. This was Evan's strategy. He knew he couldn't win in a courtroom because the deed was ironclad. So he was taking the case to the court of public opinion. He was painting me as the scheming spinster's sister who had swindled the confused elderly parents. I closed the laptop. I did not engage in my line of work. You do not feed the trolls. Even if the troll is your sister-in-law 2 days later. The threat moved from digital to legal. A courier arrived at my apartment building. He handed me a large envelope. It wasn't a lawsuit. Not yet. It was a letter of intent from a lawyer I had never heard of, a man who likely practiced out of a strip mall. The letter was full of bluster. It demanded a full accounting of the estate and claimed that my purchase of the house 8 years ago was done under duress and undue influence. It demanded that I immediately cease and desist from barring Evan Powell from the property, citing implied rights of usage established by custom. It was legal gibberish. Implied rights of usage wasn't a thing when a warranty deed existed, but the letter ended with a threat. If you do not come to the table to renegotiate the ownership structure to include Mr. Evan Powell, we will be forced to file a civil suit for fraud and seek an injunction. I tossed the letter onto my kitchen counter. He was bluffing. A lawsuit would cost him $10,000 just to start, and he would lose. He didn't have the money, or so I thought. On Friday, I decided to drive up to the lake. I needed to check on the house. I had a bad feeling, a prickly sensation at the base of my neck that told me the digital noise was just a distraction for something physical. I arrived at Foxglove Lake House just as the sun was setting. The moment I turned into the driveway, I slammed on my brakes. The driveway was blocked. Sitting right in the middle of the gravel, obstructing the path to the garage, was a massive pallet of lumber. Beside it were stacked boxes of high-end ceramic tile and a terrifyingly large pile of drywall. I got out of my car, my boots crunching on the stones. I walked over to the materials. There was a delivery slip stapled to the plastic wrap. Customer Evan Powell. Delivery address, Foxglove Lake House. Date yesterday. He had ordered construction materials, thousands of dollars worth of materials. He was moving forward with his renovation as if the conversation last weekend had never happened. It was a power move. He was marking his territory. I walked up to the front door. I unlocked it. My key still worked, thank God, and stepped inside. The house was cold, but it wasn't empty. On the dining table, right where Clara had laid out the deed, there was now a messy spread of papers, blueprints, sketches, and a thick binder. I walked over and flipped the binder open. It was a business plan, a fully realized, detailed business plan titled The Foxglove Retreat, a luxury lakeside experience. I turned the pages, my anger rising with every line. Target nightly rate, $450. Peak season minimum stay, 7 nights. Projected annual revenue, $60,000. There were printouts of emails between Kendra and a property management company in town. They had already drafted the listing description, newly renovated chef's kitchen, spa-inspired bathrooms, and then I saw the contracts. They were draft rental agreements, not for hypothetical future guests, but for actual people. There were names and dates penciled in for July and August. July 10th, July 17th, the Miller family. August 1st to August 14th, the Henderson wedding party. They had already taken deposits. I stared at the paper. They had sold weeks of my house to strangers. They had taken money for a property they did not own. This wasn't just entitlement anymore. This was fraud. They were gambling that I would be too weak to stop them, or that I would cave to the family pressure to avoid embarrassing them in front of these paying guests. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a notification from my security system. Motion detected front porch. I looked up through the window. I saw a white van pull up. A man in coveralls got out holding a clipboard. I walked to the door and opened it before he could knock. "Can I help you?" I asked, blocking the doorway. "Evening, ma'am," the man said. "I'm looking for Evan Powell. We are supposed to start the demo on the kitchen tomorrow morning. I just wanted to drop off the dumpster." "The dumpster?" I asked. "Yeah, for the cabinets," he said, pointing to the van. Evan said, He wanted everything gutted by Monday. I stepped out onto the porch. I looked the man in the eye. Evan Powell does not own this house. I said clearly, I am the owner, Stella Powell, and I did not hire you. The contractor looked confused. He checked his clipboard. I have a work order here signed by Evan. He gave me a deposit check. The check is going to bounce or the work is illegal. I said, if you touch this house, if you remove a single cabinet screw, I will have you arrested for trespassing and destruction of property. You can take your dumpster and leave. The man hesitated. He looked at my face, saw the absolute lack of bluffing in my eyes, and sighed. Look, lady, I don't want to get in the middle of a domestic. I'll call him. You do that, I said. Tell him to come pick up his lumber, too, or I will have it towed to the dump. The contractor walked back to his van, making a frantic phone call. 5 minutes later, he drove away without unloading the dumpster. I went back inside and took a picture of the rental contracts. Then I composed a text message to Evan. I attached the photo of the contract draft. Stella, I am at the house. I sent the contractor away. I see you have taken deposits for rentals. You have 24 hours to refund that money and cancel these bookings. If you do not, I will contact these people personally and tell them they have been scammed. And Evan, if I see one more delivery truck, I am filing a restraining order. The response was immediate. He must have been waiting by the phone for the contractor to call. Evan, you can't do this. We have already spent the deposit money on the materials. You are going to ruin us. I typed back. Stella, you ruined yourself. You sold something you didn't own. Refund the money, Evan. It is the family house. I have a right to make a living from it. You don't need the money. You selfish. You are sitting on a gold mine and letting it rot. I am trying to build a future for my kids. You have no right to stop me from earning a living. Earning a living? I whispered to myself. He called stealing my asset. Earning a living. I didn't reply. I locked the house up. I took the binder with me. I was shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer adrenaline of the confrontation. But the real blow was yet to come. I drove back to the city that night, my mind racing. I needed to secure the perimeter. I needed to make sure he couldn't get back in. I would have to change the locks again. I would have to install cameras. On Monday morning, I was back at my desk trying to focus. When my personal line rang, it was Clara Benton. Stellar, she said. Her voice was not calm. Clara was always calm. This time she sounded urgent. Where are you? I am at work. I said Harbor Lock. Hi. You need to come to my office, she said. Now, or better yet, meet me at the county clerk's office, the recorder of deeds. What happened? I stood up, grabbing my bag. Is it Evan? I have a friend who works in the filing department. Clara said she flagged something this morning. A request came in to update the owner contact information and the mailing address for the property tax bills for Foxglove Lake House. He is trying to divert the bills. I asked, walking fast to the elevator. That is annoying. No, Stellar, Clara cut me off. It is not just a change of address form. It is a quit-claim deed. I stopped in the middle of the hallway. But a new quit-claim deed was submitted for recording at 9 this morning. Clara said it purports to transfer the property from Wren Hollow Holdings LC to Evan Powell. That is impossible. I said, I am the only member of Wren Hollow. I didn't sign anything. I know you didn't, Clara said, but the document has a signature. It looks like yours, and it has a notary seal. He forged my signature. I asked. The world seemed to tilt. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was a felony. It gets worse. Clara said the notary seal. It belongs to a notary who died 3 years ago. He is using an old stamp he must have found or bought online. He is desperate. Stellar, he is trying to force the title change through the system so he can show the rental agency proof of ownership. I am on my way, I said. Hurry, Clara said. If this gets recorded, untangling it will take months. We need to stop the clerk from stamping it, and Stellar brings the police. I hung up. My hands were trembling, but my mind was ice cold. Eden had crossed the line. He hadn't just stepped over it. He had sprinted past it with his eyes closed. He believed so thoroughly in his own narrative that he was the rightful heir, that the house was his, that he had convinced himself he could rewrite reality with a fake signature and a dead man's stamp. He thought he was fighting for his inheritance. He didn't realize he was fighting for a prison sentence. I ran to my car. As I merged onto the highway, I thought about the text message he had sent me. The deed is just the start. He was right. The deed was the start, but the end was going to be written in a room with metal bars. I dialed the non-emergency line for the police as I drove. I would like to report a fraud in progress, I told the dispatcher. My name is Stellar Powell, and my brother is currently at the county recorder's office trying to steal my house. The fluorescent lights of the county recorder's office hummed with a low, headache-inducing frequency that seemed designed to drain the will out of anyone standing in line. But I was not standing in line. I was in a small glass-walled conference room in the back, sitting across from Clara Benton and the deputy recorder, a nervous man named Mr. Henderson, who looked like he wished he were anywhere else on earth. On the table between us lay the document that had triggered Clara's emergency call. It was a quitclaim deed. It was printed on standard legal stock, the kind you can buy at any office supply store. At a glance, it looked official. It had the parcel number for Foxglove Lake House correctly listed. It had the legal description of the land boundaries, and at the bottom, above the line marked, was my signature. I stared at my own name. The loop of the S was slightly too wide. The cross on the T in Stellar was a fraction of an inch too high. To a casual observer, it was me. To me, it was a stranger wearing my face. "It is a tracing," I said. My voice was quiet. I did not scream. I did not pound the table. In my line of work, when you find a breach in the firewall, you do not panic. You isolate the infected node. You analyze the code. You prepare the counter-strike. Clara nodded, her expression grim. That is my assessment as well. If you look at the ink density under a magnifying loupe, there are hesitation marks. The pen stopped and started. A person signing their own name writes with muscle memory. It is fluid. This was drawn, not written. And the identification. I asked Mr. Med Henderson. The deputy recorder swallowed hard. He pushed a second piece of paper toward me. The individual who submitted the filing, he provided this. He said he was your authorized agent. It was a photocopy of my driver's license, but it was a photocopy of a photocopy. The image was grainy, the edges blurred with static. The expiration date was from 2 years ago, an old license. I must have left in a drawer at my parents' house. Or perhaps one Evan had scanned years ago for some forgotten family paperwork. He came in person. I asked. Yes, Mr. Henderson said this morning, right when we opened. He was very insistent. He said the transfer was urgent due to a family medical emergency. He tried to pay the recording fee in cash. Did you record it? I asked. No, Mr. Henderson said quickly. Mrs. Benton's contact in the indexing department flagged the notary stamp. It belongs to a Mr. Arthur Miller. Mr. Miller passed away in 2022. The commission number is expired. I looked at the notary's seal on the fake deed. It was faint, likely stamped with a dried-out pad that Evan had found in the bottom of a box in the garage. He had forged my signature, stolen a dead man's stamp, and walked into a government building to steal a $500,000 property. It was sloppy. It was desperate, but it was also a felony. Can I have a copy of the intake log? I asked. Technically, since the document was rejected, Mr. Henderson started to protest. Mr. Henderson, Clara interrupted, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet. We are trying to avoid a massive fraud investigation that would require subpoenaing your entire staff to testify about why a dead notary's stamp almost passed through your window. A copy of the log would be very helpful. Mr. Henderson printed the log. I took the papers. I did not feel the heat of anger anymore. I felt the cold clarity of a prosecutor. I was holding the smoking gun. Do not arrest him yet, Clara said when we walked out into the hallway. I looked at her. He committed forgery, Clara. He tried to steal my house. If we arrest him now, he will claim it was a misunderstanding. Clara said he will say he had your verbal permission, and he just messed up the paperwork. He will play the confused brother. He will say he was trying to help the family. Juries can be sympathetic to family squabbles if the intent isn't proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. The intent was to steal. I said, we know that. Clara said, But we need to prove that this wasn't just a panic move. We need to prove it was a premeditated, systematic attempt to defraud. We need the full picture. Did you get the digital logs? I am working on it, I said. I drove back to my apartment, my mind racing. The physical evidence was damning, but physical evidence can be explained away by a good liar. Oh, Stellar told me to sign it for her because she was busy. It was a lie, but it was a lie that could muddy the waters. I needed the digital footprint. I sat down at my workstation, 3 monitors, a secure server connection, the hum of my own hardware. This was my domain. Evan thought he was playing a game of paper and ink. He didn't realize he had declared war on a data architect. I pulled up the photos I had taken of the rental contracts at the lake house. I zoomed in on the email address Evan had used to communicate with the rental agency. lacaveevan82@gmail.com. It was a new account. I ran a search on it. It had been created 3 weeks ago. I cross-referenced the IP address used to access the harbor lock desk Wi-Fi when Evan visited my office 4 months ago. A rare visit where he came to borrow money for car repairs. His phone had auto-connected. I had the MAC address of his iPhone. I accessed the public logs for the scheduling software used by the contractor who had sewn up with the dumpster. The software build had a public API for checking appointment status. I queried the appointment ID from the contractor's clipboard. User IP 68.144. I ran a tracer route. The IP resolved to a residential broadband provider in the suburbs, specifically the node that serviced the neighborhood where Evan and Kendra lived. But that wasn't enough. I needed a direct link. I went deeper. I looked at the metadata of the affidavit of consent that Clara had also found in the rejected file, a secondary document Evan had submitted claiming that the tenants, my parents, agreed to the transfer. I scanned the document. It looked like a standard form downloaded from a legal template site, but at the very bottom, in tiny print, was a URL footer downloaded from LegalZoom account. User EP Construction. EP Construction, Evan's failed side hustle from 5 years ago. I had the link, but then my eyes caught something on the affidavit that made my blood run cold. There were 2 other signatures on the page. Gary Powell, Linda Powell. They weren't forgeries. I knew my mother's handwriting, the way she looped her L. I knew my father's sharp, jagged G. These were real signatures. My heart hammered against my ribs. Had they been in on it? Had they conspired with him to steal the house back from me? After everything I told them, after the tears in the kitchen, I grabbed my phone and dialed my parents' landline. My hand was shaking. If they were part of this, I was done. I would sell the house, burn the money, and never speak to them again. My mother answered, "Hello, Mom." I said I skipped the pleasantries. "Did you sign a paper for Evan this week?" "Oh, hi, Stellar," she said, sounding cheerful. "Yes, we did. Just yesterday morning. He stopped by before work." "What did he tell you it was?" I asked. My voice was tight. "He said it was a consent form for the county." She said something about updating the flood insurance maps. He said because we are the lifetime residents, or whatever you called it in that agreement, the county needed to know we were okay with the maintenance work on the dock. He said it would save us a fine. "The maintenance work?" I repeated. "Yes," she said. "You know how the county is about permits." Evan said he was just handling the administrative headache for us. "He is such a good boy for helping with the boring stuff. I know you're busy with your company." I closed my eyes. The relief that they weren't betraying me was instantly replaced by a sick fury at how easily they had been played. "Mom," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady, "listen to me very carefully. That was not a flood insurance form. It was an affidavit consenting to the transfer of the deed. He tricked you into signing away my ownership." There was a silence on the other end, a long, confused silence. "But," she whispered, "he told you it was for maintenance," I said. "He stapled the signature page to a fake cover sheet, didn't he? Did you read the actual text, Mom? Or did he just show you where to sign?" "He was in a rush," my mother stammered. "He had the car running. He said, 'Just sign here, Mom. I don't want you guys getting fined.' Gary, come here." I heard the phone fumble. I heard my father's muffled voice in the background. "Stellar says the paper wasn't for insurance." My mother's voice came back, sounding on the verge of tears. "Stellar, we didn't know. We swear we didn't know." "I know you didn't," I said. "He used you just like he used Grandpa. He wouldn't." My father's voice came on the line. He sounded older, more fragile. He looked me in the eye. "Stellar," he shook my hand. He said, "I got this, Dad." He wouldn't look me in the eye and lie. "He did, Dad." I said he took your signature, attached it to a fraudulent transfer request, and tried to file it at the courthouse this morning. The only reason he failed is because he used a dead notary stamp. I heard my father let out a sound that was half gasp, half sob. It was the sound of a man realizing that the foundation of his family pride, his son, was rotten. "Why?" my father asked. "Why would he do this?" "Because he thinks he is entitled to it," I said. "And because he thinks you are too old to notice, and I am too passive to fight." I looked at my computer screens. The digital evidence was compiled. The IP addresses, the timestamps, the account names combined with the rejected documents at the county office and my parents' testimony. I had him on forgery, fraud, identity theft, and elder exploitation. "Stellar," my mother wept. "Is he going to jail?" I paused. That was the question. I could send him to jail. I had enough right now to have a squad car pull up to his office. But if I did that, the family would shatter. My parents would spend their twilight years visiting their son in prison. The grandchildren, Leo and Sam, would grow up with a father behind bars. The guilt would kill my parents even though they were the victims. "I am not going to call the police today," I said, "but we are going to end this once and for all." I called Clara back. "I have the proof," I said, "and I have the parents." He tricked them into signing the consent form by telling them it was for flood insurance. "Classic manipulation," Clara said, her voice disgusted. "He relies on their trust. He weaponizes their love." "Set up the meeting," I said. "Not at the house. At your office, formal, scary. I want a court reporter there. I want a videographer. Tell him it is a mandatory mediation regarding the estate dispute. Tell him if he doesn't come, we file the police report." "He will come," Clara Clear's throat said. "Narcissists always think they can talk their way out of the trap. He can talk all he wants." I said, "I am just going to play the tape." I spent the rest of the afternoon compiling the dossier. I printed the logs. I printed the email chains. I printed the fake deed. I organized it all into 3 identical binders. One for me, one for Clara, and one for Evan. At 6:00, my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. It was Evan. He must have known the deed hadn't gone through. The clerk would have called him by now, or he would have checked the online portal and seen the rejection status. He knew he had failed, and he knew that I knew. I opened the message. "Evan, you think you are so smart with your lawyers and your rules. Go ahead, try to pin this on me. But remember one thing, little sister. If you make this official, if you drag my name through the mud, you destroy Mom and Dad. You break this family. If you do this, you will be the one who leaves them with nothing. Is your precious house worth losing your family?" I stared at the text. It was the ultimate gaslight. He was holding our parents hostage. He was betting that I loved them too much to hurt him. He was right about one thing. I did love them, but he was wrong about the rest. I wasn't going to lose the family. I was going to excise the tumor that was killing it. I typed a reply, my fingers steady on the glass. "Stellar meeting Wednesday 9:00 a.m. Clara's office. Be there or the police come to you." I hit send. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was the silence of the hunter waiting for the trap to snap shut. The conference room at Clara Benton's law firm was designed to intimidate. It was a space of mahogany and glass situated on the 14th floor, with a view of the city skyline that reduced the people on the street below to insignificant ants. The air conditioning was set to a temperature that felt clinical, almost preserving. I sat on one side of the long table, flanked by Clara and a silent court reporter whose fingers hovered over her stenography machine like a pianist, waiting for the downbeat. My parents sat in the middle. They looked diminished. My father, Gary, usually a man who filled a room with his voice, was staring at his hands. My mother, Linda, looked pale, her eyes darting between me and the door, terrified of the conflict she knew was walking down the hallway. Then the door opened. Evan did not enter like a man who had been caught forging documents. He entered like a man who had been wronged. He wore a suit that was slightly too shiny. His tie knotted with aggressive precision. He held the door open for Kendra, who walked in, clutching a large, leather-bound photo album to her chest as if it were a shield. They sat opposite me. The lines were drawn. "We are here," Evan said, breaking the silence before Clara could even open her file. His voice was tight, laced with a tremor of righteous indignation. "But I want it noted that we are here under protest. This entire proceeding is a farce. It is an ambush orchestrated by my sister to humiliate us. This is a mediation session, Mr. Powell," Clara said calmly. "It is an opportunity to clarify the ownership and usage rights of the property at Foxglove Lake before we involve the courts or law enforcement." Kendra slammed the photo album onto the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "You want to talk about rights?" Kendra asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "What about their rights?" She flipped the album open and slid it across the mahogany surface toward my parents. "Look at that, Linder," Kendra said, pointing to a glossy 8x10 photograph. "That is Leo's first birthday on the deck. Look at how happy he is." She flipped the page. "There is Sam learning to swim off the dock. There is the 4th of July barbecue 2 years ago. That house is not just lumber and drywall, Stellar. It is their childhood. It is their home, and you are trying to evict them. You are trying to tell 2 little boys that they are not welcome in their own grandfather's house because their aunt is on a power trip." I looked at the photos. I remembered those days. I was the one holding the camera for half of them. I was the one who bought the life jacket Sam was wearing. I felt a pang of genuine sorrow in my chest. I love those boys. I would step in front of a train for them, but Kendra was using them as human shields. "I am not evicting the children, Kendra," I said, keeping my voice steady though my heart was hammering. "I never said the boys could not come. I said the house is not yours to renovate, rent out, or sell." "It is the same thing," Kendra cried, tears welling up in her eyes. "If we do not own it, we are just guests. We are just visitors. You are robbing them of their legacy." My mother let out a small sob. "Please see, can't we just share? Why does it have to be about who owns what?" "Because ownership dictates responsibility, Mom," I said gently. "And it dictates reality." "Reality," Evan scoffed. He leaned forward, planting his elbows on the table. "Let us talk about reality. Stellar, the reality is that you lied. You lied for 8 years. You sat at our dinner tables. You ate our food. You let Mom and Dad worry about you, all while you were sitting on a secret pile of cash. You deceived this entire family." "I did not deceive anyone," I said. "I just did not correct your assumptions." "That is a lie by omission," Evan shouted. "You manipulated everyone. You made Dad feel like he was still the patriarch, letting him think he was giving me the house while you held the deed in your back pocket. You set us up. You waited until I had emotionally committed to the property, until I had made plans just so you could pull the rug out and look like the big hero. It is sick, Stellar. It is psychological warfare." He was good. I had to give him that. He was twisting the narrative so effectively that for a second I saw my father nod slightly. Evan was making my silence the crime rather than his theft. He was turning his greed into a victim's plea. I hid the truth because I knew this would happen. I said, looking directly at my brother, "I knew that if you knew I had money, you would stop seeing me as your sister and start seeing me as a bank." And I was right. Look at you. You are not angry that I saved the house. You are angry that you did not get to cash it out. I poured my soul into that house. Evan roared. "We are moving past the emotional arguments," Clara interrupted. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of a judge's gavel. She adjusted her glasses and opened a file folder that was color-coded in red. "Mr. Powell contends that he has an ownership interest in the property based on verbal promises and financial contributions." Clara said, "Is that correct?" "Yes," Evan said defiantly. "I have paid into that house for years. Sweat equity and real money." "Let us examine the real money," Clara said. She pulled out a spreadsheet. It was a forensic accounting of the family fund bank account my father managed. I have here the records of all transfers made from Evan Powell to Gary Powell over the last 8 years. Clara said, as we established previously, the total amount is minimal compared to the operating costs. However, I am more interested in the memo lines on your checks. Clara slid a document across the table. It was a photocopy of a check Evan had written 3 years ago. The amount was $200. Please read the memo line. Mr. Powell, Clara said. Evan stared at the paper. He didn't speak. Read it, Clara commanded. Equity installment, Evan muttered. Clara pulled out another one, and this one dated 6 months ago. Buying contribution, Evan read, his voice lower, and this one, Clara, produced a third check. Mortgage share. Clara clasped her hands together. These notations are very specific. Mr. Powell, equity, buy and mortgage. These are terms that imply a contractual agreement to purchase ownership. They imply that you were not just contributing to groceries or utilities, but that you were paying down a debt in exchange for a title. So Evan said, crossing his arms, that proves my point. I was paying for the house. I was buying it from Dad. That is the problem. Clara said, you cannot buy a house from someone who does not own it. Gary and Linda did not own the house. Stellar did. So, who told you that these $200 checks were mortgage payments? Evan froze. His eyes darted to my father. Dad did. Evan lied. Dad said if I pitched in, the house would be mine one day. Gary. Clara turned to my father. Did you tell Evan he was buying equity? Did you tell him he was paying a mortgage? My father looked up, his face gray. No, I told him we all had to chip in for the maintenance. I told him the upkeep was expensive. I never used the word mortgage. The house was well. I thought the house was free and clear, but I knew I didn't have a mortgage on it. Exactly. Clara said. Gary thought he owned it outright. He would never ask for mortgage payments on a house that had no mortgage. So, Evan, if your father didn't tell you to write equity installment on these checks, who did? The room went silent. The air conditioner hummed. Evan shifted in his seat. It was implied. It was an understanding. No, Clara said sharply. It was a fabrication. You wrote those notes to create a paper trail. You were building the case for adverse possession or constructive trust. You were creating evidence for a lawsuit you planned to file the moment your parents passed away. You were preparing to steal this house from your sister long before you knew she owned it. That is not true, Evan yelled, standing up. I was just being thorough. You were delusional, Kendra blurted out. We all turned to Kendra. She was staring at the checks, her face a mask of horror. Kendra, Evan said, reaching for her arm. Don't listen to them. She pulled away from him. You told me we were paying the mortgage. Kendra whispered. You told me that your dad was holding the note and we were paying him back. You said that once we paid off a certain amount, he was going to sign the deed over. You said it was a rent-to-own arrangement with your parents. It was, Evan pleaded. Basically, it was not, Kendra screamed. $200. You told me you were sending them $1,000 a month. I saw the budget, Evan. I saw the money leaving our account. I had other expenses, Evan stammered. What other expenses? Kendra demanded. Where did the rest of the money go? If you were only sending $200 to your dad, where is the other $800 a month going? Where has it been going for 5 years? I watched the realization wash over her. Evan hadn't just been lying to me and my parents. He had been skimming from his own family budget. He had been taking money he claimed was for the lake house mortgage and pocketing the difference. He lied to you too, Kendra. I said softly, there was no mortgage. There was no deal. He was taking your money and pretending it was for the house. Evan looked around the room. He was cornered. His parents were looking at him with broken hearts. His wife was looking at him with pure fury. And I was looking at him with nothing but cold hard pity. So he did what narcissists always do when they are cornered. He attacked. This is your fault. Evan screamed at me, pointing a shaking finger. You poison everything. You sit there with your high and mighty attitude, judging me. You don't know what it is like. You don't have a family to support. You don't have pressure. You just have your money and your empty life. I have my integrity, I said, and I have the deed. He tricked Dad. Evan yelled, turning to our father. She tricked you, Dad. She made you look like a fool. Are you going to let her do this to me? I am your son." My father stood up. He moved slowly, painfully. He placed his hands on the table and looked at Evan. "She didn't trick me, son," my father said, his voice cracking. "She saved me and she saved your mother. And looking at you right now, I think she saved the house from you." "Dad," Evan whispered. "Sit down, Evan." Clara said her voice was not asking. Evan collapsed back into his chair. He looked deflated, a balloon that had been popped. Clara closed the financial folder. She placed her hands flat on the table. "We have established that there is no validity to the claim of equity," Clara said. The payments were a fiction created by Evan to deceive his wife and establish a false legal narrative. She paused, looking deeply into Evan's eyes. "But we have one more matter to discuss, a matter that is far more serious than a domestic dispute." Clara reached into her briefcase and pulled out a black binder. It was the one we had prepared yesterday, the one containing the evidence of the forgery at the county clerk's office. "I have scheduled a file meeting for tomorrow afternoon," Clara said at the county recorder of deeds office. "We are going to review the original title history. We are going to review the deed Stellar holds, and we are going to review a document that was submitted for filing yesterday morning." Evan's face went white. He knew exactly what she was talking about. "We will be conducting a side-by-side comparison of signatures," Clara continued, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And we will be examining the notary seal used on that submission. If there are any irregularities found in that document, I will be legally obligated to hand the entire file over to the district attorney for prosecution." "Prosecution?" my mother gasped. "For what?" "For fraud, Mrs. Powell," Clara said, "and for forgery." Evan didn't speak. He couldn't. He was staring at the black binder as if it were a bomb ticking down to zero. "Tomorrow," Clara said, 10:00. "If you do not show up, Evan, the file goes to the police immediately. If you do show up, we can discuss whether there is any path forward that does not involve handcuffs." She stood up. "Meeting adjourned." I stood up and gathered my things. I didn't look at Evan. I walked past him, and I could smell the fear radiating off him. It smelled like sweat and cheap cologne. Kendra was still sitting there staring at the wall, the photo album of her children forgotten on the table. My parents were holding on to each other, looking like they had just survived a shipwreck, only to find themselves on a deserted island. I walked out of the room, leaving the wreckage behind me. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Tomorrow, the steel doors would snap shut. The drive to Foxglove Lake House on Wednesday afternoon felt less like a commute and more like a funeral procession. The sky was a bruised shade of purple, threatening a storm that hadn't quite broken yet. I arrived first, unlocking the door and disabling the security system, a system I had upgraded remotely the night before to ensure no codes worked except my own. Clara Benton arrived next. She carried a different briefcase this time, a slim hard shell case that looked military grade. She set up a digital recorder in the center of the dining table, checking the levels with the precision of a sound engineer. "Remember, Stellar," Clara said, her voice low. "We are not here to scream. We are here to let him hang himself with his own rope. The goal is to get him to admit to the commercial intent and the financial deception on the record. Once we have that, the forgery charge becomes the nail in the coffin." "I know," I said. "I'm not going to lose my temper. I am just going to turn on the lights." When Evan, Kendra, and my parents arrived, the atmosphere was toxic. My parents looked like they hadn't slept in 3 days. My father's eyes were sunken, and my mother walked with a fragility I had never seen before. Evan and Kendra, however, walked in with a brittle, defensive energy. They were cornered animals, dangerous and unpredictable. We sat at the same table where just days ago they had tried to strip me of my property. Now the power dynamic had shifted tectonically. "This is ridiculous," Evan started immediately, throwing his keys on the sideboard. "Drag us all the way out here for another lecture. Can't we just settle this over email?" "Please sit down, Mr. Powell," Clara said. She pressed the record button on the device. A small red light blinked into existence. "This meeting is being recorded for legal purposes. Anything said here can be used in future litigation or arbitration." Evan sat glaring at the red light. "We are here I began, my voice steady, because before we go to the county office tomorrow to discuss the irregularities with the deed filing, I wanted to address the practical reality of this house. There seems to be a fundamental misunderstanding about what this property is for. It is a family home, my father said softly. It has always been a family home. Exactly, I said. And to keep it a family home, I included specific clauses in the use agreement regarding commercialization. Evan, on Sunday, you claimed you wanted to rent the house out to cover costs. You called it smart business. Evan crossed his arms. So what? Everyone does it. Airbnbs are everywhere in Hollow Pine. You are leaving money on the table. I am protecting the zoning and the insurance liability, I said, but more importantly, I am protecting the peace. I told you explicitly no rentals. You don't understand the market. Evan snapped. You have to monetize assets like this. It is the only way to keep them afloat. Is that why you prepared the contracts? I asked. I slid a piece of paper across the table. It wasn't the photo I had taken of his binder. It was an email print out. This is an email from Mrs. Gibble, 3 doors down. I said she emailed me yesterday. Apparently, a couple from Chicago knocked on her door asking for directions to the Powell rental. They said they had a viewing appointment. Kendra gasped softly. Evan's face flushed to deep crimson. You didn't just plan it, I said. You were actively marketing it before you owned it. Before you even asked Mom and Dad. I was testing the market. Evan yelled. I needed to see if the numbers worked, and they did. We could make $60,000 a summer. Stella, do you know what that money could do for us for the boys? So, it was about the money, Claire interjected smoothly. Not the legacy, not the memories, the money. It is always about money when you don't have enough of it, Evan shouted, slamming his hand on the table. You don't get it, Stella. You sit on your high horse with your tech company. Millions. We are drowning. We have credit card debt. We have 2 tuitions. We have a mortgage on our own house that is underwater. I needed this house to work for me. There it was, the admission. My parents looked at him in horror. They had been told he was successful. They had been told he was stable. You are in debt, my mother whispered. But the promotion, the new car, the car is leased, Mom. Evan spat. Everything is leased. We are living paycheck to paycheck. And this house was supposed to be the lifeboat. I was going to rent it out, pay off our cards, and finally breathe. And she pointed a shaking finger at me. She stole the lifeboat. I didn't steal the lifeboat. Evan, I said. I stopped you from drilling a hole in the hull. You don't know anything about this house. Evan countered, desperate to regain moral ground. You write checks fine, but I know this place. I know where the pipes freeze. I know how to fix the dock. I am the one who cares about the physical structure. The physical structure, I repeated. I reached down into my bag and pulled out a heavy spiral-bound report. I dropped it onto the table with a loud thud. The cover read Geostructural Engineering Report. Foxglove Parcel 44. Do you know what this is? I asked. Evan stared at it. A survey. 8 years ago, I said, opening the report to a centerfold diagram. Right after I bought the house, I hired a structural engineer. Do you see this red line? I pointed to a jagged line running through the geological map of our shoreline. That is a sheer plain, I explained. The soil under the west wing of the house, the wing where Mom and Dad's sleep, was liquefying. The entire foundation was sliding toward the lake at a rate of 2 in per year. The engineer said that without intervention, the master bedroom would have collapsed into the water within 3 years. My mother put a hand to her mouth. My father leaned in, his eyes wide. I never told you, I said to my parents, because I didn't want you to be afraid to sleep in your own bed, and I didn't want you to worry about the cost. I turned the page to the invoice. $80, $4,000. I read the number aloud. For 22 steel helical piers driven 40 feet into the bedrock. I paid a crew to come in here in the dead of winter when you guys were in Florida to jack up the house and secure it. I looked at Evan. He was pale. You talked about painting the dock. Evan, you talked about changing the cabinets while you were picking out tile samples. I was literally holding this house up with steel and concrete. $84,000. My father whispered. Stella, you had that kind of money back then. I liquidated my retirement account to pay for it. I said I took a loan against my car. I ate ramen noodles for a year. That is why I drove that old sedan. Evan, not because I was cheap, but because I was paying to make sure our parents didn't slide into the lake while they slept." The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a paradigm shifting. All the years of my parents thinking I was the struggling artist, the lost child, while Evan was the responsible one, it all evaporated in the face of that one invoice. "You saved our lives," my mother said, tears streaming down her face. "You saved the house, and you saved us, and you never said a word." "I didn't want gratitude," I said. "I just wanted you to be safe." I turned to Evan. He looked small. The bluster was gone. He was staring at the engineering report as if it were an alien artifact. He realized finally the magnitude of the difference between us. He played house. "I kept the house standing." "You," Evan stammered. "You should have told us. So you could have tried to refinance the house to pay for it." I asked. "So you could have taken out another predatory loan like you did with Grandpa." Evan flinched. "We are done with the history lesson," Clara said, checking her watch. "The reality is established. Stellar is the owner. She is the financier. She is the steward. Evan, you are well. Legally speaking, you are a liability." Clara packed up the recorder. This meeting was to clarify the ownership history and the intent. Clara said, "But the matter of the filing yesterday, the document you tried to submit to the county, is not something we can settle at a dining table." "What do you mean?" Kendra asked, her voice shrill. "I thought this was it. I thought we were hashing it out." "We hashed out the past," Clara said. "Now we have to deal with the crime." Evan looked up, terror in his eyes. "Tomorrow morning," Clara said, Fleur 10:00. "We are meeting at the county recorder's office. The file is currently in a holding queue. We are going to go there. We are going to have the clerk pull the original deed, and we are going to compare it to the document Evan submitted." "Why?" Evan whispered. "Why do we have to go there?" "Because I said standing up. That is where the truth lies, Evan. In the permanent record. You tried to overwrite it. You tried to erase my name and replace it with yours, using a fake stamp and a forged signature." "I didn't." Evan started to lie, but the fight was gone. "Don't," I said. "Just don't. We have the logs. We have the notary info. We have the surveillance footage of you at the counter." My father stood up. He looked at Evan, not with anger, but with a profound, heartbreaking disappointment. "You forged her name?" my father asked. His voice was barely audible. Evan didn't answer. He looked down at the table. "Answer your father," I said. I had to. Evan burst out, crying now. "I had the renters lined up. I needed the proof of ownership. I thought once the money started coming in, you guys would see. You would see that I was smart, that I made the right move. I was going to pay you back, Stella. I swear you were going to pay me back with money you made from renting out my own house." I asked. "That is not paying me back, Evan. That is money laundering tomorrow," Claire repeated. "If you do not show up, I file the police report immediately. If you do show up, and if you are honest, maybe Stella will have mercy. But that is up to her." Clara walked to the door. My parents stood up. They looked at me, then at Evan. My mother walked over to me and hugged me. It was a fierce, desperate hug. "I am so sorry," she whispered into my ear. "I am so sorry we didn't see you." "It is okay, Mom," I said. They walked out, leaving Evan and Kendra sitting at the table. I packed the engineering report back into my bag. I zipped it up slowly. I walked over to where Evan was sitting. He was weeping, his face buried in his hands. Kendra was staring out the window at the lake, her face devoid of emotion, likely calculating her own exit strategy from this marriage. "Evan," I said. He looked up. His eyes were red, his face blotchy. He looked like a child who had broken a vase and was waiting for the punishment. "You always wanted to be the owner," I said, my voice dropping to a temperature that matched the freezing lake water outside. "You wanted the title. You wanted the glory. You wanted the power." I leaned in close. "Well, tomorrow you are going to get the full experience. You are going to stand in front of a government official and answer for your actions. You wanted to be the man of the house tomorrow. You will learn the price of pretending to be one." I turned and walked out the door, leaving him in the dark, supported by the steel piers I had paid for. The air in the records room of the county clerk's office was stagnant, smelling of old paper, binding glue, and the slow decay of history. It was a windowless vault in the basement of the courthouse, lined with metal shelves that stretched from the linoleum floor to the acoustic tiles of the ceiling. We stood around a large metal examination table. My parents, Gary and Linder, stood on one side, looking like they were attending a wake. Evan and Kendra stood on the other, vibrating with a mixture of defiance and terror. Clara Benton and I stood at the head of the table. The clerk, a woman named Mrs. Higgins, who had been managing these archives for 30 years, placed a heavy dust-covered box on the table. "This is the original parcel file for Foxglove Lake House," Mrs. Higgins said. "It contains every transaction dating back to 1955. Clara put on a pair of white cotton gloves. The theatricality of it was not lost on me nor on Evan. It signaled that we were dealing with evidence, not just paperwork. "We are here to look at three things," Clara said, her voice echoing slightly in the cramped space. "The original deed, the use agreement, and a document that was sealed in this file 8 years ago at the request of the late Arthur Powell." "Grandpa left a sealed document?" Evan asked. His voice was thin. He was sweating despite the air conditioning being set to 68 degrees. "He did," Clara said. She reached into the box and pulled out a yellowed envelope. She carefully slid the top open. She pulled out a single sheet of handwritten stationery. I recognized the letterhead immediately. It was from the notepad Grandpa kept by his phone. "This is a notarized letter of intent," Clara explained. "It was recorded simultaneously with the sale to Wren Hollow Holdings. Would you like to read it, Gary, or shall I?" My father looked at the paper as if it might burn him. "You read it, Clara." Clara adjusted her glasses. "To my family," she read, "I am selling the house to Stellar, not because I do not love the rest of you, but because I do. I know my time is short. I know the wolves are at the door. I have seen the way money changes people. I have seen how my grandson looks at this land. He sees a gold mine. He sees a way to leverage equity. He sees dollars." Clara paused. Evan shifted his weight, looking at the floor. "Stellar looks at this land and sees the water." Clara continued reading. "She sees the memories. She is the only one who offered to buy it to save it, not to use it. She's the only one who did not ask me what it was worth. She only asked if I was okay. I am entrusting her with this burden so that the house does not become a weapon. She is the guardian. The rest of you are the guests. Please, for the sake of my memory, do not fight her on this." My mother let out a sharp, choked sob. She covered her mouth with her hand. "He knew," she whispered. "He knew all along. He knew because I told him," I said softly. "I told him I would pay off the debt Evan created. I told him I would fix the foundation, and I promised him I would never sell it." "That is touching," Evan sneered, though his bravado was cracking. "So Grandpa liked you better. That does not change the law." "Actually," Clara said, "it shaped the law, or at least it shaped the contract." Clara reached back into the box and pulled out the original lifetime use agreement that I had signed 8 years ago. This was not the simplified copy I had shown them at the table. This was the full legal filing. "Please turn your attention to Addendum C." Clara said the forfeit clause. "I have never seen this." Evan said, "Because you never bothered to look up the public record." Clara said, "You just assumed you knew what it said." "The clause states that the lifetime usage rights granted to the Powell family are contingent upon," and I quote, "good faith conduct regarding the preservation of the property." Clara looked up, her eyes locking onto Evan. It continues, "If any family member attempts to encumber the property with debt, sublet the property for commercial gain without written consent, or falsify documents regarding the ownership of said property, their rights of access are immediately and permanently revoked. Their status reverts from family user to restricted guest, meaning they are barred from the premises unless physically accompanied by the owner." The silence that followed was absolute. "You built a trap," Kendra whispered. She looked at me with wide, horrified eyes. "You knew he would try something." "I hoped he wouldn't," I said. "But Grandpa and I knew he might." We knew Evan felt entitled. We knew that entitlement makes people do dangerous things. "This is just a piece of paper," Evan shouted. You can't ban me from my childhood home because of some fine print. I can ban you for forgery, Clara said. She opened the slim black binder she had brought with her yesterday morning. Clara said you submitted a quit-claim deed to the clerk upstairs. We have discussed the fake signature. We have discussed the dead notary. But there was one detail you missed. Evan, one detail that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are the one who created that document. Clara pointed to a string of alphanumeric characters at the bottom of the forged deed. The parcel identification number. Clara said you used the code 0455992B. So Evan said, that is the parcel number. It was, Clara said, until 8 years ago, when Stellar bought the property and transferred it to the LLC, the county rezoned the shoreline. The parcel number changed to 0455992C. The only place the old B code still exists is on the original loan documents from the home equity line of credit that your grandfather took out. The documents you helped him sign, the documents you had access to when you were stealing his equity. Evan's face went slack. He had copied the number from the old papers he had kept, thinking he was being thorough. Instead, he had left a fingerprint that dated back to his original crime. You used the old code, my father said. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion, because you were working off the papers from when you took the money. Dad, Evan started. Don't, my father said. He held up a hand. Just don't speak. Kendra stepped away from Evan. She took a distinct, deliberate step to the left, putting 2 feet of distance between them. I didn't know, Kendra said to me. Her voice was shaking. Stellar, I swear to God, I thought the money was legitimate. I thought the deed was real. He told me he handled it. He told me you agreed to it. You signed the rental contracts, Kendra, I said, because he told me we owned it. She cried. He told me you were okay with it as long as we gave you a cut. He lied to me, too. She turned to Evan, her face twisting into a mask of pure fury. You used my kids. You put my children in the middle of a fraud investigation. Are you insane? I did, for us, Evan pleaded, reaching for her. I did it so we could have money, so we could stop drowning. You are drowning, Kendra said coldly. We are leaving. Kendra, Evan yelled. Mr. Powell, Clara interrupted. We have a decision to make right now in this room. Clara placed the evidence file on the table. I have enough here to have you arrested for felony forgery, wire fraud, and identity theft. The sentence, given the value of the property, would be significant. Minimum 3 years, likely 5. My mother let out a low moan. She grabbed my father's arm to steady herself. However, Clara continued, looking at me. The client has instructed me to offer an alternative. Evan looked at me. His eyes were red, rimmed with exhaustion and fear. He looked like a man who had been running a race for years and had finally hit the wall. I do not want to send you to prison, Evan, I said. Not because you don't deserve it. You do, but because I will not force Mom and Dad to spend their retirement visiting you through a glass wall. I will not make Leo and Sam grow up with a father who is a felon. So, Evan swallowed hard. So, you are letting it go. No, I said, I am enforcing the clause. I pointed to the use agreement. From this moment forward, you are banned from Foxglove Lake House. You do not have a key. You do not have the gate code. You are not allowed on the property if you set foot on the driveway without me present. I will call the sheriff, and I will press charges for trespassing, and I will hand over this entire file to the district attorney. Evan opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off. Furthermore, I said, you will repay every cent of the deposit money you took from those renters. If you spent it, you will sell your car. You will sell your watch. I don't care. You will fix it today. And Mom and Dad, Evan asked, his voice trembling. Mom and Dad retain their lifetime rights, I said, because they didn't try to steal from me. They were victims of your manipulation. They can come whenever they want. But you are done. My father looked at Evan. He looked at the man he had raised, the man he had pinned all his hopes on, and he shook his head. You broke my heart, son. My father whispered. You didn't just break the law. You broke us. Evan looked down. He realized finally that he had lost something far more valuable than a lake house. He had lost his audience. He had lost the people who believed his lies. Sign the acknowledgement, Clara said, pushing a paper toward him. It states that you admit to the attempted forgery and accept the ban in exchange for non-prosecution if you ever violate this agreement. The deal is void and we proceed to trial." Evan picked up the pen. His hand shook so badly he could barely hold it. He signed his name. It was the only honest signature he had written in weeks. "One more thing," I said. I waited until he looked at me. "I know you think I am hoarding money," I said. "I know you think I'm stingy. But the reason I have money is because I don't spend it on appearances." I pulled a final document from my bag. "This is a trust document," I said. "I established it 5 years ago. It is a maintenance fund for the lake house. It currently has $75,000 in it." Evan's eyes widened. "It is designated for the future upkeep of the property," I said. "Roof, tax hikes, emergency repairs. It was always there. It was always going to be there to support the family, but I locked it. I put a condition on it." "What condition?" Kendra asked. "That it can only be accessed by a board of 3 family members," I said, "and all 3 members must have a clean record of financial conduct regarding the estate for 10 consecutive years." I looked at Evan. "You could have been on that board, Evan. In 2 years, you would have had access to help manage the property. You would have had the legacy you wanted, but you couldn't wait. You had to steal what was already being saved for you." I put the trust document back in my bag. "The fund stays locked," I said. "I will manage it alone because clearly I am the only one who can." I turned to Mrs. Higgins, the clerk. "Thank you for your time. Please keep the original file secure." "I will, dear Mrs." Higgins said, eyeing Evan with disdain. I walked out of the vault. I walked up the stairs, past the security checkpoint, and out the heavy double doors of the courthouse. The storm had broken while we were inside. The rain had washed the streets clean, leaving the pavement glistening under the gray sky. The air smelled of ozone and wet concrete. It was crisp. It was real. Clara walked beside me. My parents followed a few steps behind, holding on to each other for support. Evan and Kendra were still in the basement, likely having the conversation that would end their marriage. "It is done," Clara said. "It is done." I agreed. I looked at my parents. My father looked older, but he stood straighter than he had in the meeting room. The burden of the lie was gone. He knew the truth now. It was a painful truth, but it was solid ground. "Stellar," my mother said, catching up to me. She took my hand. Her grip was weak but warm. "Let's go to the lake. Just us. I want to sit on the porch." "Okay, Mom," I said. "I will drive." We walked toward the car. I didn't feel a surge of triumph. I didn't feel like pumping my fist in the air. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about winning. It was about correcting the balance. It was about stripping away the varnish to reveal the wood underneath. No matter how rotten-fisted it might be, the house was safe. The lake was safe. And for the first time in my life, the silence in the family wasn't about secrets. It was just silence. The illusion of who had the right to the crown was dead. And I was finally just Stella. Not the bank, not the ghost, just the owner. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening while driving, cooking, or maybe relaxing at your own lake house? Please let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the Azad Revenge Stories channel. Like this video and hit the like button so this story can reach even more people. Thanks again.